bit of an attitude adjustment here. So we're establishing our bowl effect. Well, as promised, we're going to keep moving forward here on the Mr. Jones project. And what came? Joe ordered front fender patches. Left side arrived. Driver's side is going to be a while. But let's go out to the trailer where we keep all the car parts and pull the driver's side fender in here and get reacquainted. Okay, some light rearranging, I guess. And that's a better look at the fender that we're gonna bring inside. Okay, well there it is. I went and got the driver's side fender. I even brought in the passenger side fender because we know we're gonna be getting the part in soon, at least we hope. So this is the original fender for the W31 we're working on, and this is the rot that has to get repaired. Now what we'll do is I'm gonna turn this fender around and show you guys. So when you get a patch panel, you get the outer skin. And that's all fine and good, but this inner structure here, this body and this flange here, they're not available. Those you gotta make. And you can see where it's kind of, pinch weld here, the outer skin to this inner structure. I had to repair them on the convertible we did, so I'm not opposed to doing that. You can see how this, has the mounting holes for the fender. So just replacing the outer skin is not really going to be the only answer because we have to make sure that this is all kind of rust-free and solid. Up here, you viewers will remember that I mentioned how these front fender braces, they go from the lower portions of the front fenders in front of the wheels and then bolt to the bottom side of the radiator support. W cars only have no rubber insulator here to make room for the air scoops. This is really punky and thin. That's gonna have to get done. Check that out. Some of you viewers who are just tuning in, what we have here are two front fenders that have these circles drawn in them. And in my opinion, I wasn't there on the assembly line in Lansing, but these circles would indicate that holes had to be drilled in the front wheel wells for the outside air induction scoops. Both fenders have them. I've seen where some cars have W30 or 31 or 32 written in the fender. This doesn't have that. This has obviously never been painted in here, but that wax mark is there on both fenders. So let's play around with getting back to the old nitty gritty, getting back to what got this channel started. Let's get back to cutting some metal, making some metal. I do love it. I do really, really enjoy that. And we're gonna turn this rusty fender, because we're not replacing body panels. No, I'm not looking for rust-free fenders. No, I'm not even looking for NOS fenders. This is how it's gonna be. But it's gonna be structurally solid. And we're gonna have fun polishing in all of here. So that is my plan. It's going to be blazing hot this coming week, and I intend to be down here, and as we call it, my happy place, for sure, avoiding that crazy heat. This one here is rotted a little bit more, and you can see what I'm talking about that inner structure. So if it's solid, and I can put rust treatment there, and I can mount the new fender skin to it, then it's good. But I know on Alyssa's car I had to do a fair amount of repairs there. You can see the bottom here in the front is rotted, and I got to make something there. The bottom here, behind the front wheel, we're going to use this. I'm not going to use this whole thing. You know how I like to do it. I like to cut out just what I need to repair the rot. We're going to do it this way. Okay, we're gonna do it the way we did the rear quarters, right? We're only gonna use what we have to use. So let's start by taking this wheel well trim off, and we're gonna get into cutting out what we know is rotted. And let's get into see how that inner structure looks. Of course, you start seeing little things like this. See that? Get my glove out of the way. That's a rot hole, and this is a rot hole, and this rot hole. We'll have to make all of this. Everybody has a different way of doing this. Some people will tell you to cut your first piece, your new piece first, rather. Cut your new piece first. Lay it on, then cut out the car or the original piece to receive the new donor piece. I don't always subscribe to that logic. I like to cut out what I know is bad, finding out where the good metal is, trimming it to a line that's conducive to a nice, pretty repair. And if you have to, make a template, do some measurements, cut the donor piece large and sneak up to it, right? We're gonna do all that all over again. So let me just start opening this up. Well, it's talking to me, and what it's saying is there's not much worth saving. From my cut line, not from what's left, but from the top of my cut line here, it's 2.5 inches from that to the very bottom. So I know when I want to use this donor piece, if I keep this line, at least to have a point of reference. The inner structure is just, toast, along with the outer structure. And I think what I want to do, I do love index lines. I do love cutting into something that I have a point of reference, namely that nice hole. So if I keep this line down into the structure, I can take this whole biscuit off in one piece and make that kind of as one entity. We have a threaded captured nut here for the wheel well. I'm sure you guys know me well enough to know that we don't leave crap like this. We don't bury it. How many shops out there do? Cut it out, fill it with, snot or something. Make it look real pretty. But if you look down here at the mounting holes, like that's a little rot hole, that's a little rot hole. There's nothing, it'd be nice to be able to say I saved this. I don't know. I don't think it's worth it. So let's just do it. So this is the inner structure of the fender, which I could have flipped over and showed you, but I wanted to work from the outside here. So you have this kind of forwardmost cup. You guys see this here? And like I said, there's that captured nut for the wheel well. These are the holes that the lower fender bolts go into. And then there's the vertical structure that goes up behind the fender. Then the skin, the actual fender itself, goes on here and gets spot welded. I'll come up with a plan. Already I can see that, we're going to make this piece by itself. And then we'll make this piece to, weld onto the existing one. We'll make this kind of bucket, this tray. And because I cut it out this way, I'm pretty confident that we can make it, pretty accurately resemble this. Let me show off here what it looks like if I had never cut this apart. Now, I know a lot of you guys have done this before. You'll say, well, how do you know where you're keeping this way? Well, I'm relying on two things. One of which I'm relying on that new donor piece. But two is I'm relying on this line here. See that line? Where I left that? And obviously the trajectory of the inner jam. But before I even get into doing that, we need to start making an inner piece that matches this. Then we'll make another piece that matches this. And we'll start really kind of getting the layout here. It's going to be real easy to make sure that I have a donor section that can do that. So I'm saving these fenders. You can comment, guys. You can suggest. You can even say you got saffron, beautifully mint fenders. I think in light of everything we're doing here to this car, these fenders are staying. This is not going to be fun because they don't make front patches. Lots of rust. Let's worry about the back first. Let's worry about the inner structure. Let's worry about making those pieces. You can definitely see where somebody used the old dent puller trick to knock out a dent that was in the fender. I'm going to embrace it. So we'll play around with making some of that. That'll be fun. And then we'll clean this whole thing up. I promise you it won't look like the same fender when we're done. It will look like the same fender. It just won't be a rusty piece of junk. It'll just be a patinaed piece of junk. I figured if we're getting back into this building of a car theme of, series of videos here that everybody, seems to be missing. They're missing the Mr. Jones project. It's kind of what got the channel started here. I figured I may as well, get back into it myself. It is a lot of fun to do this. It really is. To do the metalwork, but also to do the YouTube stuff. It's a lot of fun. So let's just get some clarity here. All right, take this came with one of my new welders. That's a Hobart brand. You can get these on Amazon, all kinds of places. It's a metal gauge. Metal gauge to tell you what gauge your metal is. And you slide these little prongs. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it before, but for those who haven't, you take the teeth here and you slide it over to a piece of metal to tell you what gauge you're working with or what you have. So I can tell you that this stuff that came out of the car is 16 gauge. That's a rusty 16 gauge. This right here is 16 gauge. 16 gauge metal. We're basically dealing with three parts. We have this front part here. Okay, I labeled this one here number 1. This is our front part. This goes towards the wheel of the car. This is at the very bottom of the fender. And this is where the wheelhouse, the plastic wheel liner, threads into there. And the fender bolts to the bottom of the cowl through these elongated slots right here. You see those two holes here? 1, 2. And that gives you some, in and out adjustment here with that fender. So, back to our little demonstration here. Part number 1 is the front piece. Really only has one fender hole and one fender well liner hole. It's a pretty complex curve. That's definitely a bowl, right? But you can see here that piece number 1 stops. It does not include the rest of this. It stops here before the rearmost fender bolt provision. Number 2 sits over this, overlaps it, and then these all get, welded together here. These are all, pinch welded. So we only have to worry about making one hole in each piece. Now the vertical piece is part number 2, and that will lay over top of the tail end of the first part. And then of course number 3 is the actual fender skin itself. And it's only 3 pieces of metal, one of which we bought from the store. So we're a third of the way there. I have to make this piece, and then I have to make that piece out of this piece. Pretty cool. Exciting stuff. I just sent this picture to my friend Yolan. He said, "That's funny, I don't remember sending you my fenders yet." He's got a 68 Cutlass he's working on. Needs the same work. We did this on Alyssa's convertible. We're certainly doing this on Mr. Jones. Pretty much anybody who's tinkered with these cars knows there's rot there. And if you don't see it, Maybe it was fixed with Bondo or something years ago, but it's there, I promise you. All right, cool. This will be fun to do. It'll be fun to bring you guys along with, kind of get back to where we were. Certainly it's been a while, because the last time I was doing this kind of work, to be perfectly honest with you, was before I was prepping my car for the big trip to Tallahassee. So it's been a while, because we were in Tallahassee for April 1st. So April, May, June, oh boy, it's been a while. All right, stick around, this will be cool. So the plan is to make this piece of metal, which I just cut out of that flat sheet that you saw, resemble this. Now you can't just go willy-nilly here. You gotta have some sort of a game plan. My game plan, which I may or may not adhere to the entire time, but at least, you know, you want to go out busting out the gate with some sort of a plan. And you want to give yourself, maybe I'll use a pencil here I'll use this for you guys. Give yourself some sort of an idea, right? If you're laying your donor piece onto your new piece, give yourself some sort of an idea. You know you're going to have a break here and here, because there's definitely an uptick where the fender bolts are. And you know here and here starts a bend. So we'll do some kind of a indicator here that only I will understand, and that's great. Right there. Okay, something along these lines. I'll do a little dotted line there. So we know that this piece here is going to have to get curled up. And I do this sometimes for myself. I know I'm going to curl this piece up. Over here, there's an uptick for where the fender bolt goes. And that's really all that is extremely important to me. What I can do also is take my good old tape measure here. And we know that it's basically 1 3/4 inches in from the end here. So 1 3/4 inches, and I'll just put a dot. This is not any kind of a blueprint. This is not anything that has to be adhered to the entire time, but this gives you some sort of an idea here, okay? Actually, this can go like this. So we know that somewhere in here is going to be some sort of a bend up. Okay? Here we're going to start our bend. I hope you guys can see this. And at that uptick, we're going to do something really, really custom here. We're going to trace this out. We know that this is a good visual here, because this is going to help me remember the entire time. That's coming out. You know, this is going to get curled up. All this red will be cut out. Can you guys see what I'm doing? And up here will be this beginning of this uptick, this kicker to come up to grab that fender. So we can start with that stuff. Now, somewhere off the corner of where this flare is, we know this is going to be interesting, because you got to have this kind of a bowl effect. Hole here, stretched up, bent up, easy peasy. Then we put a bolt hole in it. Let's see what we can do. Yeah, I decided to make a relief cut here, because there's really no way I'm going to be able to make that cup without having some sort of a relief. So that's how that's going to happen. So now that goes up, this goes up, we can curve them in the middle, cut a hole. Let's see how that goes. We'll put this in the vise. And we're going to start our bend further up, because, you know, we're not going to get a 90 degree like we're folding a piece of paper here, right? Oh, let's make sure we're kind of sort of square. Put your big mitts on there. Be patient, man. That's today. We got the ball peen. Love the ball peen. Obviously, later on you're talking about, we should mention that. The light, I can't see you guys. If you light these metal next to each other, you can start seeing that. Oh, yeah, this is nice kind of in a line. Remember, with motors, this is nothing but a different force I promise you. Don't be scared. Well, I'm very apologetic. I was all proud to show off how I cut this nice oval hole with a grinder, but you missed it. It was not recording, so that's a really rudimentary mistake, and for that I'm sorry. But let's get back to basics here and show you what I've come up with. All right, this is a version that I think I'm happy with so far. Okay, looks like it's kind of got the same profile. Everything is working out just fine. But what I want to do is I want to create this raised area here. See how this has a step up here that we talked about a minute ago? And the front fender has that same provision. It's really because there's a bolt and washer that goes there. So what I want to do is create that relief. And we're not going to go crazy with creating a dimple die and all that kind of stuff. But I do happen to have some flat stock here that happens to be the same width of what I want to do. So we're going to put it right on that line that I want it to start at. This is really just kind of... So now we'll just take this hammer here. You're gonna get blocked. And you're just gonna stretch the metal. Right around that piece of flat stock. And oh look, there's your nice dimpled up area. Do it again. And just introduce the curvature that we want. You can start seeing that I have that shape there. I gotta see what I'm showing you. See right there. We'll have to clean that up a little bit. But there you go. I'll do a little bit more of that. And then let's see if we can't get a hole in there. This is what you start with. I mean, you mess around with these rusty, junky, left for dead cars. And with a little bit of due diligence and tenacity, you'll end up with this. Like I labeled them, 1, 2, and then 3 would be the fender piece, which obviously is cut off because the fender's still sitting on the floor. 1, 2, 3. So that's that, all right? I'm gonna start making this flat piece of metal, 16 gauge, into this. Here we go. Here's a relative roadmap to what I think is gonna be a successful attempt at making this part. My arrows here that turn in tell me that I know I'm gonna have to have a little bit of a curl to mimic this curl. This dotted line across here horizontally tells me that that's where this break, this upturn is gonna be. I haven't gotten into making the stamping yet for this. We'll do that once we have it all made. Same thing here. There's a bit of a step down here so you guys can see that. You see? That's not flat. So that's what's going to happen on that dotted line. I know it looks kind of crazy. All I've done is 2 bends. Did this, obviously, gradual 45, we'll call it. And I began with the upturn on the right side so that I maintain some sort of point of reference here. Now I have it on my standoff piece of flat stock that we used yesterday, and we're going to start introducing this detent line in here. We're going to start introducing that down here. Certainly crude, but it's effective. Here's my line. Start to see how you just stretch it. Start giving yourself a little something to work with. Okay? You know, you start really kind of forcing it one way, and it starts to comply a little bit. It starts to agree. You know, and if it doesn't agree, get yourself a bigger one of these. There you have some of it. Starting to look like something. You know, I didn't cut any relief cuts here because I said, you know what? Let's bend it and see where it wants to have a relief cut. It'll tell me. Obviously, we're going to cut that out. We're going to cut that out. We're going to close up those gaps. Starting to get our shape. And you really see the curve there. So we'll clean it up a little bit. Did the notch here from the bottom. I think it's time we put a hole in there for the fender and we start really detailing it. Cutting this tab back here a little bit more, putting the notch in there, getting it cut to length. So far, so good. Before, after. I'm not completely dissatisfied. Obviously, if I had taken the shrinker stretcher out, which I'm not extremely proficient with at all, I would have been able to do a little bit better of a job here. So now, before we get crazy and doing all this welding, everybody wants to get jammed up, get welding on stuff. What I need to do now is make part number 3, the fender patch panel, actually fit the fender so that my body line is the way I want it. Once I can get that in place and get that fender nice and smooth and consistent, then I can spot weld this kit that I made, this pair of whatevers, spot weld them to the bottom of the fender, and then I can start spot welding to the remainder of the upright. That's right there. All right, all right, all right. We're on to a next phase of this fender repair. Pretty happy with how the inner structure repair came out, but now we have to make it all work. Here's the patch panel that you get. There are 2 different patch panels you can purchase, guys. You can buy one that does not have the actual holes in it, and I think it's 19 inches, if I recall. It's the ones I used for Alyssa's convertible. It's just what came with the car when we bought it. The previous owner had those. Joe got these. And I think they're just a little better quality. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure they're better quality. But moving on, let's get to getting here. What I've done is obviously you can see I just clamped on the piece that I cut off the fender. Okay. I clamped it on. I got it held on with a magnet. I do have the wheel well trim. And this is what we're going to try to duplicate. It's tough when you do it the way I did it, in that you don't have a way to know, how far down the mounting holes are from the top. So what I've done is I've borrowed a little tailor's tape here from, the ladies upstairs. This way you can do an accurate tape measure along a curved surface. You can't run a regular tape on stuff like that because, it'll get the kinks in the tape and dink, 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 and it doesn't tell you anything. But this stuff, follows the contour pretty nicely. So that said, I'm going to really try to clean this up, look for any rust that I might want to get out, and do a final cut. If I don't have to go any higher, I'd rather not, because this is a piece that's already been cut out. And this is a piece that I know fits. I start cutting another piece out, and I'm going to have to then incorporate that piece along with this piece to make sure I have my dimension right. I don't mind going this way, because then I don't have to metal finish this whole edge if I keep it. And there's really not much to save down here anyway. So let's do that. Let's just clean this up with a mini flap. Get some shiny metal here going so we know what we're looking at. We know, I know, and now you know, I don't want to go above this body line. I want to keep the repair down below this curve here, which is right here. So which means I can hack this off. Start working with less on my new donor part. And, really start playing the match the puzzle pieces game. Which I enjoy. You got to enjoy it because a lot of it's trial and error. So let's see what we can't do about getting this thing to fit. Those dark spots tell you there's a little bit of rust there, but I think I can weld to that. I really want to give myself some room to do the weld and then do metal finishing and still keep it below this line, right? See if you guys are able to see. So if I know that I start cutting at this line, by the time I weld and burn paint and metal finish, I'm going to be up. Same game we played with the rear window. Joe didn't really want the rear window repair to kind of, encompass the sail panels in the back. So I had to really be diligent about keeping my weld line tight and low so that it allowed room for my burn and polish line. If that makes any sense to you guys. Metal. So that's all a very good sign, which means I'm not chasing anything in there. Okay. So we're going to take this bad boy. And Tom and I at work, we like to start on the 1 when we try to do some real accurate measurements so you don't have the bung at the end of your tape and any irregularities incorporated in that. So we know I'm going to go right down to the very bottom. Okay, we're going to go right around to the peak here. From the 1, right at the corner there, we're going to follow that wheel well line. We're going to wrap around to the edge. Look at that. It is exactly 7 inches. So we're going to write that down here on the tape. 7 and 7.5, because there is a little bit of a flare, style line, if you will, down there. So there it is. That's not where I'm cutting. That's just the dimension that I know once I cut out what I don't want to keep. I got to make sure that the bottom of my new panel is exactly where the bottom of the original panel was. Okay? And what we'll do is I'll cut below the line. Okay, we're going to leave the line. You close enough to see what I'm doing? Yeah, you are. You're good. Okay, we'll leave the line. Added a piece of tape on the donor part that mimics the piece of tape on the actual car part. I also added a dimension from the chrome trim up here. Again, starting at the 1, coming down, so I have some sort of a finished point of reference. 30 1/4 to the tip of the bottom of the fender. 29 3/8. It's just how it lays out. I did it again. I ran the grinder. Sometimes people like to see the grinding happen. So there's the big piece that we know we're not going to use. Cut off to a little bit more conducive dimension to what we are thinking we're going to end up with. Again, there's my tape line, and I know we're even going to be down here below it. Okay? So I'm just, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sneak up on it. Because sometimes I love the theory of let it talk to you. What I'll do now is confirm some measurements. If I cut this below the tape line, once I'm double, triple, quadruple confident that this is the dimension I want, if I cut this donor piece below the tape line, I know, and this tape line is in the same spot as the original part, I know my cut line on this will be up in here somewhere. Still giving me an inch to play with, right? You guys follow me? Because right there's my tape line. We're not going up there. We're not even going to the tape line. We're going down in here somewhere. Right? Because I want to try to keep that line, that body line under here. That weld line under there. All right, so now what I think we're going to do is double check some measurements and cut below the tape line. Got to go up a little bit more, but we could also do the old Fitzy cut and butt if we wanted to. 29.5. This one was to here. 29.5. So that's an 1/8. Okay. Let me double check a couple things and make sure this might want to come down a hair, and this one up. And I do have the wheel well molding, so I can set that on, and where that wants to lay is where this is going to be. I am the king of second guessing. And I really, really do try to do my due diligence of keeping all measurements where they need to be and duplicating those. Luckily, I have not taken apart the other fender in anticipation of the part showing up. The inner structure is still there. The fender skin is still there. Now we're looking at the passenger side fender. This is now the driver's side fender, right? That we're working on the patch. So a couple things that I did just to compare notes. You know, I measured from the top of that mount tab right there, which goes to the bottom of the A-pillar. And I measured here to make sure it's 27 1/8 and 24 1/2 from the corner of the fender mount where it goes to the cowl. And those measurements are now consistent. So what I'm saying is I'm pretty confident that I have the height of that part where I want it. What I'm not sure I have is the swing in and out. That's going to be tricky because I went ahead and cut that inner structure off. There was nothing there to really work with. I'm spending a lot of time on these crappy old fenders. So we're pretty good. I think I have to suck it up here a little tighter. I want this new piece to go up a little bit more. But it's not bad. The wheel well molding does as good a job as anything about, you know, telling me where I live, you know, this way. But you can see here there's a little bit of a gap in there, meaning that this panel needs to go north a hair to kind of get the belly up inside that wheel well molding. And this is where you kind of get fine tuning. I love this little tool. Take it off and you just kind of keep working it back and forth till you get it the way you want it. This might be about as good as I'm going to get it. It's a pretty tight fit. My measurements are pretty much exactly where I need them to be. So part of me says let's do a quick tack or two. Hold that thing in place. Let's flip it over and see how horribly those support brackets that I made here fit. As with many things, there is good news and there is not so good news. The good news is I succeeded in getting this lower portion of the front fender cut, trimmed, aligned. I got my body line just the way I want it. Everything is good. The bad news is, well, before I would go into the bad news, we'll even talk more good news. To confirm, or at least help confirm, that I have the fender patch where it really ought to be, here's the remains of the original fender structure. Seems like if I put it where it's supposed to be, as far as elevation, seems like it lines up with the fender. There we go. Look at that. It lines up with the fender just right. That's all good news. Foreshadowing, this is not good news. If I were to do this again, I think what I would do is really dissect it and replace pieces as I go. This was a challenge doing it this way. I don't think I'll do it this way again. But if I put this where it needs to be, you know, I'm a half an inch away. This is a much more gradual curve than I have here. And that just takes up real estate. Upon further technical analysis, I decided to put this in the vise and straighten it out a little bit more. I guess maybe when I was working on this corner here, somehow I got it a little out of whack, but it's better now. It's better now. I'm still gonna work on this side edge here, but that's, yeah, my holes, and there it is. See, I gotta get the right side here. Now that I have the fender there, I'm gonna open that right side of the new inner structure out to grab hold of that fender. I promise this will be my last attempt for the day, but I'm I'm making progress. Sometimes you have to really just keep on it. You gotta just keep on it. You gotta just keep after it. Making it as official as I possibly can. I've welded in that inner structure piece that I modified last night. Made it fit pretty well. It looks to be pretty aligned. I'm not gonna go crazy with metal finishing in here too much. I am gonna, you see this when you open the door a bit. Welded up the relief cut I made in there, and let me show you. Started to spot weld this in last night. What I'm gonna do now that I have the structure in and my measurements are the way I want, that's it, right? Now, all we gotta do is make it look pretty. This is the fun part. Well, that's a fair amount of grinding, a fair amount of, evening things out. There's a pinhole right there, and there's a pinhole right there. But this is all going to get cleaned up a little bit more. What I do is I use, and you guys will see in previous videos, I use my cutoff tool kind of on edge and just knock the tops of the welds down. Then I come back with my mini flap. All of these things are to make every effort to not grind the original metal or the new metal and just grind the weld. There you have it. Okay. Aftermarket repair panel. A little fabrication on the inner structure. I don't know. 10, 12 hours worth of work. Probably at this point. I'm probably closer to 13 or 14 hours. I'll add it all up in this fender. And I'm not done with it. So it's the next day and we're on to another portion of the project. I'm laying in bed saying to myself, my gosh, I hope the passenger side fender does not require anywhere near as much work as the driver's side did. And the driver's side's not even done because it's all rotted here. But that's 13 hours in that other fender, including cutting it apart, making those parts, getting the fit right. I'm gonna cut this one out. I'm hoping that I can repair this inner structure because it's still all there, and rust treat it. I'm hoping I can repair it like I did the convertible. I really don't want to have to make another section of inner structure. I mean, if I do, I do. But it would be real nice to cut this apart, repair it, and get that patch in there. So let's do that. Wheel well trim is off, and obviously we were expecting some rot. And yes, I'm still hopeful that this is going to be less work than the other side. So let's cut it apart. Let's see if we can't salvage as much of this inner structure as possible. This is not too bad. I am realizing that I don't have a drain hole in the new horizontal support that I built for the other side. Doesn't matter. This car's never going to get wet. It's certainly never going to be exposed to salt. Well, except when we take it to Bonneville and go for $200. Inch by inch, step by step, I've extracted the bottom of the original fender skin whilst leaving the supports, working around the factory spot welds because I don't want to get bullish here. What I'm going to do is I'll clean them up with a flap wheel. I'll grind down to them and then knock all this out. Certainly, the best way to find rot is to start peeling the layers apart. Now what we're going to do is we're going to, look at this. See the fender skin is wanting to come off? It's talking to me, man. It wants to be fixed. We're going to cut this fender skin where it wraps around the support, thereby eliminating all original skin off of the lower structure. Really clean this up nice and pretty like. There is a rot hole here. I thought I nicked it with the grinder, which I guess I did, but it's already rotted. So what I'll do is, because when you open the door, you see that, I'll weld that and work on that from the inside, I believe. Overall, still very happy with this, but here's what I have found. Yes, yes, yes. We knew it was too good to be true. That part that I nicked with the grinder, that just went away too easily. And here you can see, if you look closely, let me see if I can bring you along. Oh yeah, see that right there? That is a crack. So, no big deal, we can handle it. I'm gonna cut it up in here somewhere, and we're just gonna make a patch. Easy. It's got one 90-degree uptick. So let's do that. Let's cut this piece out, and then we'll duplicate a piece. Not gonna mess with this. This is important to me, and not gonna get into here because the rest of my day is important to me. So let's just cut this out, make a piece, weld it, keep on trucking. That'll be cool. You didn't think it was gonna be that easy, did you? I kinda did. It's not a big deal. We just gotta make another little corner here. Just lay your piece of paper over what you wanna make the template for. Take your dirty hand, rub the paper around the metal. You'll have a nice, rough idea of how to cut it with a pair of scissors. You'll know that it's good enough if you can lay it on the other side and actually there's paper below, above, left, and right of what you're working on. So you know you can trim it to fit. Don't go crazy wasting time measuring left to right, top to bottom, all that kind of jazz. Get it real close. Get on it with one of these. You know, and then you can trim to fit, trim this, trim that. The best part of this little patch here is that I only have one little bit of this compound curve here with the uptick. That's where it is tough. When you make that 90-degree up and flat, and then you got to curve that, you got to get to pounding on that a little bit. But all right, we'll get some 16 gauge out. I'll lay this on there, make a piece. Got it. Okay, it looks huge, right? But once you start putting a curve in it, and once you start putting this uptick in it, you start taking up real estate here. So first thing I'm gonna do, because it's the hardest part, is make this uptick in this flange. Because everything else I can chase downhill and trim off straight edges, as opposed to trimming off this curved piece. So let's just start introducing that shape to it a little bit. Now we know that when you do the bend, you're gonna take up some meat anyway, because you can't just compress the metal and do a 90. So I just did a little bit of a dotted line here, and we'll put it in the old vise. So it's got two turns, right? It goes up and then it goes flat. So we're gonna start with the up, which is the first line that I drew. Enough with the dotted lines. Maybe you guys can see it better if I give you, crank it down, and we'll just give it the old kind of, give it the old beef. There it is. The ball peen. Don't leave home without it. See? Bent it right on that line. Now this is where it gets kind of tricky. I kind of overbent it because I know I'm gonna overbend it again when I open it up. Yeah, so you'll get your more gradual kind of an S turn. Got to push it low. See what I'm talking about? Let me show you guys what that is, because that worked out pretty well. Lay this on there. Can you see that? Now we're starting to get that shape already. Look at that line. It's just metal, man. It's just metal. Yeah, and then this, we got to bring this back. It's a lot of this. It's a lot of this kind of maneuver, you know? Now let's get, we know that this has to be bent down. A little closer, I got the shape I wanted. And what you can do is, what I can do, start laying it in place so you know you're starting to get a corner that you really like how it fits. The bottom left is agreeing with everything we've done here. So what I can do now, and I'm gonna say, if I can, then I'm gonna leave this alone. This is fitting pretty well. And I'm gonna take a Sharpie and I'm gonna trace the top and the right and the side so I know what I can start trimming off. And then we'll see if we can't get this thing to start snapping into place. This really actually started coming into shape really pretty quickly. Let's trim it. Okay, do your Sharpie line. Get your spot, get it in the spot where you're happy with how it fits, and then make lines that you're gonna follow to trim it. And look what you have to work with. Ready? Look at all that. Isn't that nice? You trim all that meat off of there and you start having something that you can really fit in there. Even still, I'm not gonna cut at that line. No way. I'm gonna cut outside that line so that I can then still final bend it, final trim it. And with any luck, it snaps right into place and then you can weld it in. All right, welded in. Structurally sound. Form follows function here, guys. I'd rather leave more weld from a actual structural standpoint. Never to be seen. Can't see it once the fender skin is on it. So why metal finish it? Now that said, I think I do want to take a peek inside. Okay, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. A little couple whiskers. But we're gonna just clean that up a little bit. Man, I do see some daylight in places, so we got a couple welds to do. But we'll do that all from the inside. I'll flip the fender over, we'll finish welding it from the inside, and because when you open the door, you do kind of see that a little bit. We're gonna call that good enough for the inside of the fender. I'm pretty happy with that. I don't need to go any further. We're gonna put some rust treatment in here, and then we're gonna play around with the actual patch. All right, a little rust neutralizer on there. Now it's lunchtime. This is the kind of stuff we like to use. Extend Loctite. I think it used to be owned by Permatex, but I've been using it for years. Another product like Mike's Red Hot. I put that on everything, man. So cool, right? We're never gonna see this because once the panel goes on, that's that. I'm gonna do some cleaning up on here and let this talk to me. I had a little bit of problem on the other side, burning through in places, and I don't want to play that game. So I went hunting for some rust-free metal, and I found some right up here. Not a problem. Completely coincidentally, the dimension from here to here is 7 inches. It's, you know, that's what we were dealing with on the other side. This is a little bit of a different line here, but not completely different. So this is a lot easier, man, because we have this piece. We have this lower support, so we know that this thing can only go so high. So let's just start trimming this thing to fit. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying that with this lower structure in place, you know, tacking the patch panel on is relatively straightforward. Let's trim this thing up and get it to fit. So this is still gonna be too big once I get that. Yeah, this is too big, which is great. So now I'll sit here with my mini flap and I'll just keep kind of whittling this thing until I get the line the way I want it. It's as simple as that. This is going very, very well. I have this panel exactly where I want it. I just gotta trim it a whisker more. But we'll do the old Fitzy's trick. The old cutting butt. I'll get a thin blade and I'll just kind of give it a little lick right in there. And that's gonna be that. And then we weld it. There's the fit. I'm gonna start right here, tacking it, and then I'm gonna work my way down. This little line here, this flange is not wrapped around tight like it would be, you know, from the factory. So this is gonna close up a little bit more here. But you know, obviously I want this to be lined up. Lined up and tacked in, this is really going well. It's time consuming, even when it's going fast. So I'm just gonna sit here and weld, which is the fun part, and then grind, which is the not so fun part. But look, Making progress. Making progress on Mr. Jones. This thing used to have rotted front fenders. It no longer does. Well, there you have it. And it's certainly, like I always say, it looks better on camera than it does in person. But I think, again, for this application, I think I'm pretty happy with this. I spared you guys the metal finishing episode. The grinding and the polishing and the grinding and the polishing. Oh my gosh. It takes a lot of time. I want to say this is 5 or 6 hours today. I think it's 6 hours to do this. To, fabricate that piece that goes inside the structure, weld that in, rust treat it, cut this to fit, and polish it out. 6 hours. Now, that doesn't sound so bad when I'm telling you that it took me 13 hours to do this one. So, for those who are watching, and who are those who... It's funny, there's a pinhole right there on both fenders. It's a pinhole that I'm just going to embrace. Right there. See it? Yep. Look, for those watching, for those learning, for those laughing at me, I keep no secrets. It is what it is. It takes me what it takes me. So there you have it. Let's lay these fenders on the floor together and see how awesome they look side by side. This is a cause for relative celebration. I'm digging it. We're making progress. We're back to making progress on Mr. Jones. That's cool stuff right there. The bottoms of the fenders are no longer rotted. And quite honestly, I did them in just about the same line. This we can clean up a little bit better. Just so we have that nice straight line of... That came out straighter. Kind of like that look. All right, you know what time it is. I sure do. Okay, I guess that's the next thing I'm fixing. They don't make any parts for that. So we're gonna have a good time making all that stuff. Okay. This is the end, I'm pretty sure, of the front fender repair video. Until I do another one. All right, if this is it, if this is the end. Thanks for watching. Maybe if John stops by this afternoon, maybe what I'll do is hang a fender or two on and just see how it starts looking like a fuselage. Here's to hoping.